Welcome to Real Money, Real Life, the podcast where we get real about money and the messy human stuff that comes with it. I'm Linda Grizely, financial educator and your Me Money guide to financial clarity. Each week, we dive into financial concepts and money strategies, but we always tie it back to real life, emotions, mindset, and how money actually shows up day to day. If you're ready for practical tools, mindset shifts, and honest conversations that meet you where you are, not where the world thinks you should be, you're in the right place. Because you deserve to feel confident with your money and good about how you use it. No judgment, no lectures, and definitely no putting yourself last.
Hello, everyone. If you're listening, you're one of the real ones, the ones ready to build healthier conversations about money, love, and partnership. Today, we're talking about couples and money, how communication, planning, and emotional skills shape financial confidence in a relationship. This topic aligns closely with the work I do around helping women feel confident in control of their money without shame or overwhelm. And Robin, my guest today, is going to bring a powerful relationship lens to the conversation. We'll talk about why money is one of our biggest stressors for couples, how to create intentional financial plans together, and how stronger communication can reduce conflict and deepen connection. So, Dr. Robin Buckley helps high achieving clients thrive in both their careers and their relationships. She's a cognitive behavioral coach, author, professional speaker, and TEDx speaker who works with executives, teams, and high performance couples. Her best selling book, Marriage Inc., The Boardroom Blueprint to a Lasting Love, released in September 2025, offers a strategic, practical model for strengthening relationships by applying skills typically used in business and finance. Welcome, Dr. Robin.
Thanks, Linda. So glad to be here.
Yeah, hopefully I got your bio right. Feel free to correct us or add anything you want to that.
Nah, you're great.
Okay.
It's good enough.
Great. Well, I'm so glad you're here and talking about relationships and couples because it's such a stressful thing. Money is just one of those things that always comes up in relationships, and mainly because people have different money personalities, different ways they were brought up with money. There's just so many beliefs that we already have. But I would love to hear, before we dig deeper into that, what inspired you to bring business strategy into this conversation?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the world of clinical psychology where we use therapy as the tool, and therapy is important and such a great mechanism for a lot of people. But coaching comes at people's lives from a proactive, preventative approach, whereas therapy most often is intervention. And I like that perspective, especially when it comes to relationships and money. Being proactive, making plans, seeing ahead. And the work that I was doing with my clients who tended to be these CEOs of running their big businesses, creating their own businesses, they could do things so well at work, so well in their leadership roles. And then they bring up their marriages or their significant others. And I'd say, well, how did you handle conflict at work? And they'd be like, no, that's different. And I'm like, no, it's not. So I started really separating out for them the skills that they do at work or in their professional lives and applying it to their personal lives. And it was incredibly effective, especially because it created an objective framework for them. And that's what really I created a whole framework where that's where I come at this approach with couples from this business framework and what the book is on.
Great. Well, I'm not going to ask a specific question. I'm just going to say, keep talking and tell us more.
Well, one of the biggest issues that I see, and you probably see all the time, Linda, is that our brains get in the way of us effectively, strategically making plans for money or for love. And most of us exist like the brain is is in control, and that's not the case. It's learning how our brain functions, especially the parts of the brain, amygdala, frontal lobe, which we can get into if you want to, and then having specific ways to approach those parts of the brain so they work for the relationship instead of against it. And when then you build in a business framework, that's where it taps into the logical part of our brain because it's not that I'm having this issue with my partner. It's what's the pain point we're dealing with. something feels different, and it feels different when we say pain point instead of issue or problem, because it's tapping into the logical part of the brain rather than the emotional part of the brain. And when we can then develop plans and strategies and communication protocols that continue to build on the objective part of our brain, our relationships function better. And for any of the critics out there, it doesn't reduce the romance, it doesn't reduce the passion. In fact, those things get better because they have a space that is not cluttered by the pain points.
I can see that. I can see how that could work. So, let's talk about patterns or communication gaps that you see most often with couples and money.
Yeah. So I think one of, and you probably see it all the time, Linda, the biggest that I see, even with couples who have been together for decades, is that they never had the conversation right from the start about their spending and saving patterns. And not just having the conversation, but an honest conversation, not what you think your partner wants to hear, but being very clear about it. So, right from the beginning, and it's not that, well, if you're a saver and I'm a spender, we can't be together. That is not it. That is not a reason to end a relationship or not start a relationship. It's simply, what are we going to build into our plan for our marriage so that both of those can be honored, so that we do spend for the things that are important to us long term. I'm sorry, we do save, and then we also spend for fun in the moment. It's really finding space for both of them, but without those conversations, it doesn't happen. Each person keeps doing their thing, and then that's where the conflict develops. So it's not only having the conversation right at the beginning, it's also making sure you have space in your relationship regularly to have conversations about the things that impact the relationship on I say monthly basis. So it becomes a monthly relationship business meeting where anything that impacts the relationship is discussed. And finances is absolutely one of those categories where you do a review of where everything is at: savings, finances, investing, everything. And you have a conversation about, how did we hit our money goals this month? How did we miss our money goals? Are there additional things that we need to factor in? But we know as a couple that every month we're going to have this conversation. There's no blind signs in the kitchen when one's trying to cook dinner. There's no frantic text messages like, what the hell is this amount all about on our checking account? Because you have space to talk. And it's not just about the talking, it's about the connection, that we're both on the same page and we both understand it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's like most things, it's easier said than done, like finding time to put on
Mhm.
your calendar to sit down and
Yep.
purposely have hard conversations.
Uh-huh.
But let's bring back in what you said towards the beginning about the different parts of your brain and how they get activated
Right.
and how that fits into this idea of having your I don't know what you're calling, what you're calling it, like your money date, your business meeting. What are you calling it?
Well, I call it a relationship business meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is not the only meeting I suggest for couples. I actually recommend couples have a daily meeting, a weekly meeting, a monthly meeting, and then a quarterly meeting. And each one has different purposes. The monthly meeting, like I said, is going to cover kind of everything that is going on that affects the couple on more of that higher level view. So you might talk about finances. It might be any dependents that are in the house. That includes pets. That includes if you're taking care of any elderly relatives. It includes their sex life. It includes any housing issues. It includes everything. But you don't want to have that conversation every week. That's a lot, and it's heavy, and sometimes it's time consuming too. So the other meetings take care of other areas of the relationship. Daily, it's just connection. It's 5 to 10 minutes of just connecting with your partner. More than, how was your day? Fine. How was your day? Fine. That's not connecting. It's actually being mindfully present for each other. Weekly, it's maybe 20 minutes where you're just going over, what's the upcoming week looking like? Hey, the dog has a vet appointment. Which of us is free to take it? Or, whatever it might, the family's flying in for the holidays. How are we going to handle that? That's really just maintaining the flow, so that, and observing any threats that might be coming up that week that you want to mitigate. Monthly, we've talked about, and then quarterly is that the vision planning. What do we want in this upcoming quarter? What are we really aiming for? It's also getting couples out of their typical environment to just be together, very much like a business quarterly business retreat that a lot of companies do. So yes, I hear from couples all the time, Linda, we don't have time for this, Robin. I'm like, well, you haven't had time for it so far, and that's why you're seeing me. You're in a rut. So you get to decide if you want to try something new or if you're okay with where you're at. And I'm not there to judge couples. It's whether they're willing to do things that are new and different to try and change the trajectory of their relationship. And if you're like me, and I'm pretty sure you are, Linda, if it's on my calendar, it'll happen. Barring any emergency, it's going to happen. So you put these meetings on your calendar so you don't overlook it. So it becomes priority in your relationship.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So, and absolutely, if it's not on my calendar, it's not going to happen, and everything has to go on my calendar. I put literally everything on my calendar.
I hear you.
Um, so the brain functions. I do want to talk about that because I think that's a
Okay.
big important part of this.
I
And
agree.
I'm going to let you do the talking because you're the expert on
Okay.
it. So do you just pick up where
Yeah.
you want and tell us about it?
Yeah. All right. So I'm a brain geek. So I apologize to your audience. I keep this as simple as possible. In these conversations about emotional issues, there are two important parts of the brain to keep in mind. One is the amygdala and the other is the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala is the most primitive part of our brain. It's been around since we were, climbing out of the water, out of the ooze, primordial ooze. And so while it's been with us for a long time, it hasn't evolved very much. It still functions from a place of protection in just the sense of protecting us as beings, as organisms. And it does that by either fight, flight, or freeze. So when there is a threat, we will do one of those three things as human beings: fight against whatever's attacking us, run away from it, or we'll freeze in place. The challenge is that the amygdala was set up by evolution to protect us from life threatening situations. I don't know about you, Linda. Thank God, daily, I don't have a lot of life threatening situations in my life, but our amygdala doesn't know that. So when our partner is coming through the door and seems cranky, our amygdala is firing because that's a threat, even though it's not life threatening. And it's, am I going to fight him? Am I going to run away from him? Or am I just going to freeze in place and hope he doesn't notice me? So that's the amygdala. And it creates lots of what ifs and anxiety and fear and self doubt to try and get us to avoid things that are scary. Money being a big one. Our prefrontal cortex, which is located right behind our foreheads, is the logical, rational, strategic part of our brain that functions on data and information and facts. And the most important, if people listening don't remember anything else, this is what I want you to remember. When your amygdala is firing, it shuts down your prefrontal cortex. You're not able to think rationally. And thankfully, the opposite is true. When your prefrontal cortex is engaged, it shuts down the amygdala. That's important because you can actually learn strategies to get your prefrontal cortex activated so that it quiets the amygdala. That's when you're able to communicate effectively. That's when you're able to make plans. That's when you're able to use strategies to help your relationship, whether it's about money or anything else. So that's we aren't controlled by our emotions. We're controlled by the parts of our brain that actually manage the emotions. You get to decide which part of your brain you want to function off of, the fearful one or the logical one.
All right. How do we decide that? How do we
Well,
keep
the
our
decision
brain
is
from
yours.
making the decision? Like, because I feel
Yeah,
like
the
so much of it
decision is
is, it's just, I think, and especially with couples too, like, I feel like the longer you're together, the more you get triggered by things because there's so much stuff that you've like, I don't know if you want to call it baggage in your relationship over time, but I feel like, there's a lot, they read more into things the longer the relationship has been together because there's all this history. I don't want to say it's baggage or that you're being triggered, but you just read a lot into it. Like you think but you might not.
mm, yeah. Well, that is very true. I was actually just working with a couple and we were talking about assumptions, interpretations, and stories. And all of those come from our amygdala because it's trying to predict what's about to happen. So it creates the what ifs. It creates oh, this must be what's going on, instead of allowing our prefrontal cortex to say, wait a minute, what are our facts here? Or what else could be going on? So it's not just the worst case scenario. So we get to decide, Linda, and I reference it with when I work with couples. Do you like how your interactions are going? Is this effective for you? Is it supporting the relationship or is it not? And if it's not, it's learning how to manage your brain so it becomes a tool in your relation, an effective tool in your relationship. I usually say so your brain is an ally rather than an adversary when it comes to your interaction with your partner. Once you make that decision, there are so many strategies that individuals and couples can employ so things do not blow up, so things don't go off the rails, so people don't withdraw from a situation. And it might be about communication. It's always about communication. But when it comes to the topic, there might be really specific ones that a couple uses.
Yeah. Okay. Gosh, there's so many questions here. But I'm trying to figure out which direction to go. But
Sure.
I guess the next question I want to ask is, what do people get wrong about the right way to talk about money with a partner?
Mm, okay. One of the biggest things I see is that the it's not even about talking. It's a step before. It's how to manage the money in the house. And I, again, using a business framework, I talk to couples about designating a CFO in the relationship. So chief financial officer, who is overseeing the money. Now, at this point, I like to be very, very clear. I do not mean who's in control of the money. I do not mean who's making all the decisions. I am literally saying who has the oversight and who will then present it to the other partner, almost like a board, to make decisions together. That's what a CFO does. It it provides the opportunity for someone in the relationship who either has more of a strength around numbers and finances or who really enjoys it, and the other part, or who just would prefer doing it. That's who becomes the CFO. It has nothing to do with roles or what they do for a living. It's just preference. And then once a month in the week, in the monthly business meeting, they they talk about the finances. The CFO gives the overview. Here's where we're at with our finances. Here's where we hit our goals. Here we missed our goals, just like you would in business. And then they might present. Here's what I'm looking at for a new investment, or this investment's not doing well. What are your thoughts about this? It allows the other partner to then participate and absolutely have an equal say in it. So this is not a dictatorship where the CFO just gets to make all the decisions. In my world, is not a partnership. But it allows for one person to focus so that the other partner can focus in a different area of their life. Maybe they're the COO, maybe they are, whatever it might be. But each partner has different designated roles so that everything in their life is taken care of, but they're not trying to do it all together. Because I don't know about you, Linda, when my husband and I first got together and we were both coming in we were both divorced, coming in, both having been the CFOs, and now we're both trying to do it. Oh my God, our first couple months were chaos. It was like we were overpaying bills or not paying bills because we thought the other one was doing it. And finally, it was a sit down conversation of like, okay, who's going to manage this? And I'll see you in a month and then we'll talk about it. So it starts even before the communication. It's where's the management going to come from? The oversight. And then in the communication, it is determining what the overall goals are. And I am sure you talk to your clients about this all the time. What are your financial goals, short term and long term? And how does this tap into your overall goal for your relationship? How does your finances contribute to the relationship? Because in my world, that's what money does. It should contribute, not be a stressor, not be something that damages the relationship, but how is it fostering it? In the ways that you want it to. So that's what frames a lot of the conversations for couples that I'm working with.
Yeah, I can see how a lot of times when couples talk about money, it can trigger shame or defensiveness or
Yes.
blame, or one
Yep.
person might be just like, well, fine, you just do it all. So, I mean, there's got to be a way, and maybe this is part of your framework that you
Mhm.
have, where
Mhm.
you help people figure out how to talk about it.
Yes. Yeah. It is never I or you. It is always we and us. It is never we screwed up the financial goals this month. It's always, you know, or not we, I'm sorry. It's never you did it. It's always, how did we miss our mark? It's always about the two of you because it's not on one person. And if someone did, blow a bunch of money for whatever reason, then it's how can we work so this doesn't happen again? In business, effective leaders don't walk into a boardroom saying, this person screwed this up and you did this and you should have done this differently. That's going to demolish the team very fast. It's what can we learn from this? How do we do it differently? Or celebrating the wins, which a lot of couples also don't do, is like, wow, we're doing really great with our financial goals. And how do we maintain that? So it's always about us and we. Otherwise, it is easy to blame or to attack. And that is going to be the quickest way for a couple to lose that connection. And connections is what keeps that communication open and honest.
Yeah. And some of the work I do talks about like your money personality and understanding your partner's money personality. I'm assuming you bring something like that into it so that they understand how each other thinks or works with money.
Yeah, a lot of it, and I work really hard not to do a deep dive into, a person's childhood and past and all that, because that's more therapy. But we do talk about how a person was raised and how they approach money, how that might not be how they want to continue viewing money. So I don't get into the specifics as much as you do, but we certainly do an evaluation of what is your perspective, your mindset around money and how does that align with the goal of the relationship? So it doesn't have to, again, it doesn't have to be that both people are completely compatible and exactly the same on their perspectives on money. I think that's really rare. But how can you combine the mindsets so that they do contribute to the relationship, or at least at least don't undermine the relationship? So it's finding some of and I talked to couples about negotiables and non-negotiables. What are the areas or the values or the things that you can negotiate around, that there is compromise, that aren't going to, be a big deal breaker? And what are some things that are absolutely non-negotiable? Money is tricky because I have had a lot of couples who have said, nope, I absolutely do not believe in spending, or, it's frivolous and I'm not doing that. And that was a non-negotiable, and that doesn't work. If the other person is like, but sometimes I like to go out to eat, or sometimes I like to buy a new blouse or a new golf club. So it's being very clear. If something is just a clear-cut non-negotiable and isn't something that a couple's willing to work on, my question is usually, are you choosing this as a hard stop, or are you choosing your relationship? Because that's the choice you're making right now.
Yeah.
Typically, when I phrase it that way and give them some time to think about it, they're like, okay, we can have a conversation now. I'm like, right. Because if you want your relationship, there's more that you can compromise around than not compromise around.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in that spending part, that's where my me money method comes in, and it's perfect for that because it gives a container to it. It allows the person that's saying like you're spending too
Yeah.
much to, and that's how it started with my husband because I not that I said he was spending too much, but he had no idea what he was spending. So my me
Right.
money method kind of took care of that for us. Where it's like, okay, this is your money, and you've got to live within your
Yes.
means of that money, and
Yes.
there's lots of things that we could do better too, but that helped us a lot. Now,
Mhm.
I want to go back to because we're talking a lot about money, but your book, Marriage Inc., The Boardroom Blueprint to Lasting Love, isn't just about money. So I want to make sure
No.
that we make that clear. So tell us more about the blueprint and what the book is about.
Yeah. It encapsulates the idea of looking at your relationship like we do from a business standpoint. What are the things that businesses put in place to ensure that they're going to be successful? What amazes me, Linda, is so many people will spend hundreds of hours, thousands of dollars planning their 8-hour wedding. And so few devote the same time and finances to planning their marriage. And that blows me out of the water. Every time I think about that, I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. And how much of our life do we ever do that with? I mean, we plan vacations, careers, finances, ideally, meals, and yet our marriage is like, well, we'll just see how it goes. It's fate. It's, love will save us. And I'm like, No, we would never approach business that way. I was never like, I love ice cream, so I'm going to start an ice cream business and not do my research and have a business plan and have finances to support it. But we approach marriage like it is just something that'll magically happen. And I joke and say, oh, it's Disney and Hallmark and rom coms. But our society does have this idea that if it's meant to be, it'll be. And I'm like, oh, okay, but where's the personal investment to make sure what you want actually happens? So this book is very much focused on tangible, concrete strategies that couples can use to address all areas of their marriage. So it's not just, you got to talk more. That's lovely, but that's not very specific. It's like, how do you talk? How do you make the time to talk? What do you talk about? In the monthly business meetings, I talk about agendas, making an agenda, which couples, I usually get an eye roll at some point. But I'm like, okay, but what does an agenda do in business? Well, it keeps people on track. It makes sure you covered all the points you wanted to cover. And most importantly, no one gets blindsided by, I mean, they shouldn't. I've seen it happen. We're all like, oh, there's this one thing we didn't put on the agenda. That sucks. Nobody wants that. And you don't want that in your relationship. You want to know what you're stepping into,
Right.
because we've all had the conversation when we're in the middle of something and our spouse walks in and wants to talk about something. You're like, I am preparing for a meeting in a half hour. This is not the time. But if you have an agenda, for example, you know what you're going to be talking about. And if there's something that pops up, it's like, we're going to table that to next week, or we'll have an emergency meeting later on this week if we don't want to wait a whole month. But it's intentional. And I think that's the one word, if I was going to capture it, and it is an intentional, deliberate approach to your relationship.
Great. Great. All right. So if anyone's listening and they want to maybe just take one little step towards improving either their money communication or getting some structure and intention to their relationship, what's
Mhm.
one thing they can
Okay.
do to get started?
So I am going to give you the most ridiculous one. I'm going to say it and then I'll explain it. It's assign chores. And people look at me like I have three heads when I say it. But assigning chores is the lowest level, easiest way to start an intentional part integrate intention into your relationship. And what I mean by assign chores is you sit down with your partner. This is not a dictatorship. It's not me going to my husband saying, you're going to take care of these three things and I'm going to do nothing or do these other three things. That's not it. It's sitting down together and saying, here are all the things that need to be accomplished. And we'll use the Thanksgiving holiday as a good example. That's usually an overwhelming project for people who are hosting. And you can certainly take it all on yourself, and that will very likely stress you out, which will in turn stress out your relationship. Or you can say, here are all the things that need to be accomplished, that we want to accomplish to make this a really fun holiday. What are some things that on this list that you feel you want to do? And here are some things I want to do. So I'm better at baking. That was on my chore list. I'm better at decorating. I am way better at organizing the whole menu. My husband's great at the turkey. He's good at being a sous chef. He's also really good at listening to me in those moments. And he's good at keeping me calm because I tend to be a perfectionist. So when you assign these chores, people know exactly where their role is. They know what is going to be most helpful to the relationship. There's no confusion. There's no stepping on toes. There's no things that are overlooked. And it enhances trust because I know that's going to be taken care of because you committed to it. And if you don't, that'll be on our agenda to talk about. But it allows for the communication to go better. It allows for trust to build. It allows for things to get accomplished. And then it doesn't deplete the relationship because when everything else is taken care of, whether it's a holiday or not, there's more space, mental and physical space for the things we think about in a relationship, intimacy, fun, sex, all the good stuff, because everything else is tabled. So if there was one thing I would tell your audience to start with, that is easy. It's sitting down with your partner and each week in your weekly meeting saying, okay, what are our chores for this week? What are some areas that you're better at or that you'd rather do? And here are my areas. Or what's some areas neither of us want to change the cat litter box, but I'll take it this week, you take it next week. It is easy and it works.
Great, great advice. I like that. I give my husband a to-do list. Our relationship's a little bit different because he's not home all the
Mhm.
time. So I like start making a list of the things that I can't do, like things that I are too heavy or I can't reach, short people
Mhm.
problems. But, I make a list, but I don't like he's always good about doing it. But I think
Right.
sometimes, like, in the list, I'll be like, "I have all these other things I need to do." Like, he has his own list.
Mhm.
So I say, "Okay, well, let's look, and here's the top 3 priorities
Yeah,
or whatever, and these
exactly.
rest can
It's
wait."
not Yeah, it's not that my stuff is more important. It's here are the things that I really need help. My husband's big on that. I can certainly hang pictures and do that sort of thing. He is better at it and he's faster at it. And so I'll do it, but there's a 50-50 chance I might not do it as well or I might mess it up. So it's not that I'm trying to give him work. We just have it established that those are really falling under his role. If he wasn't here, I'd do it.
Yeah,
But when he can be here, and if he says, "Hey, today I've got something else on my plan," okay, yeah, that's fine. And it sounds like that's what you and your husband do.
great. Yeah. Yeah, it is. We don't necessarily I'm gonna talk to him about having some meetings, though, because I've always kinda wanted to do that, and I always thought I was just a weirdo, but now I know I'm not. So
You're not a weirdo.
now I
You're
know I'm
very
not.
effective.
All right. So, and what is one thing that people can let go of? An assumption or fear or pattern that maybe gets in their way?
A big one I see is changing your partner. And it's this very thin edge of allowing your partner to grow, expecting that that's gonna be part of their evolution, but not expecting that they have to change. So I'll hear from people, "Well, I just she's always been that way. When we got married, she used to do that. So why is it changing now?" And I see that a lot with couples in their 40s and 50s. And it's because she's growing, because she's evolving. And that you can clearly have as an expectation that your partner will change. And you can either grow with them or stagnate, and that won't help the relationship. On the flip side, if you're trying to change your partner, and my question always to couples who are getting into that kind of conversation is, you married him or her as they were, and now you want someone different. Why is that? So it's that level of expectation. So expectation for growth, but not expectation to change, which sounds contrary, but there's a clear nuance
Yeah,
between those.
I understand the difference. Yeah. Okay. Um, so is there anything else you want to add before we start wrapping up? I just want to be sure that we've got all the things covered that you wanted to cover.
Yeah. Finances are a really fascinating topic in a relationship. And I think one that's very similar is sex. That to me, the more uncomfortable a topic is for a couple, the more important it is for them to actually talk about it and schedule talking about it. Because in your relationship, if something makes you uncomfortable, it's important. It's probably a clear sign that it's important. And so coming up with communication with words to use that make it comfortable, protocols to use that make it comfortable, and then actual behaviors that make it comfortable. And so it's this weird relationship because I do see sex and money as very tied in at least in terms of how couples deal with it and manage both of those areas of their life. So finding the things that make those comfortable. If you can have conversations around those 2 areas of your life, you're doing really well in your relationship because I can't tell you how many couples will come in and like, "We're gonna talk about sex." I'm like, "Are we not gonna talk about sex?" Like, "Yes, of course we are." So, yeah, I think that's really important to keep in mind. The more discomfort it is, the more important it is to talk about.
Yeah. And I think that one of the reasons it's just it's there's a discomfort with it is because we're always taught not to talk about it. Don't talk about money, don't talk about sex, like it's a taboo thing.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
in your relationship, it's some of the 2 most important things.
Yeah, it is definitely I don't know the exact statistics, as of this year, but in the past, those 2 areas have always been in the top 3 of why marriages end. So, yeah, they're important.
What's the 3rd?
I don't remember, I think kids. I
Oh,
think it's kids and parenting.
parenting, yeah. If you have a different parenting style, that could be definitely, a reason. Okay, so tell us who needs to find to you, like who you work with, who are your clients?
Oh. Yeah, my clients tend to be people who want their relationship, whether it's married or not, to work. So they're not couples in crisis. That really is a great therapy place to start with therapy. But they're couples who are in a rut and they want their relationships. They're just not as happy or as satisfied as they used to be. I also work with a lot of couples, and I'm seeing it more and more, who are proactive. They're like, we don't want to replicate mistakes from the past, either in this relationship or from past relationships. So we want more of that proactive approach. And it's really fun to work with these couples because they want to be there and they want to be together. They just don't know how to get out of their own way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that. Okay, and how can they find you?
Yeah, easiest way is at my website, drrobinbuckley.com. I'm also on, I think, every blessed social media. So they can find me on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever their favorite one is.
Great. Well, thank you again for joining me. Been a great conversation, and hopefully some people take some good nuggets away from this and can start improving their relationship with their partner in money, in sex, in all things. I really appreciate you being here today.
Linda, this was so fun. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. All right, everyone, if you're still here, thanks for listening all the way through. And here's my closing nugget for you. When two people learn to talk about money with clarity instead of fear, they don't just improve their finances, they strengthen their partnership.
Thanks so much for listening to Real Money, Real Life. Want to see what's blocking you from financial confidence or discover your money personality? Head to the resources page at lindagriz.com for our free quizzes. That's LINDAGRIZ.com/resources. If you're loving what you're learning, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. I'm your Me Money guide to financial clarity, Linda Grizely, and I'll catch you next time as we talk more real money, real life, because you deserve to feel confident with your money and good about how you spend it. The content shared here is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not financial, tax, legal, or planning advice and does not constitute therapy or mental health counseling. Please consult an actively licensed and qualified professional for advice or help specific to your situation.